G'day community and welcome back to Alexi Does. I am Alexi and this is where I do hobby things. This month, April, looking back at April, was actually a really good month of hobby. Got a fair few models painted. Managed to play a game of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. I think we were playing 3rd edition or 2nd edition. Got all the rules wrong but had an absolute blast. Went to a couple of sales. If you watched the last video, which doing well in the YouTube algorithm, I'm a monthly video uploader and I've done 2 videos in 2 days. So I guess I don't really want people to see this or find it. But anyway, watch the last video, go to my channel, hit up the last video. You'll see all the sweet models I found, bought and built. And building those frogs certainly took a reasonable amount of hobby time this month. But that's enough rambling for me. I'll just say I'm very happy. We're exactly 1/3 at the end of April of the way through the year. And the models I painted this month brought me up to 50 models, which is exactly 1/3 of my hobby goal for the year. 50 out of 150 in a third of the year. Not sure how we got there, given I spent so long on such a small amount of models to start. But we are on track. I am recording this in the middle of May, and I can tell you we're not still on track, but we power on, we push forward, we do what we can. Let's go to the hobby desk. Okay, so we're over at the hobby desk and we'll get straight into it with some of the more boring models this month. So I'm pulling across a couple of unpainted, what are these? Goblin Town miniatures. There's a few of them, but not heaps. But basically, I'm aware that in the back of my head, this is an army that I want to just keep plugging away at. You need about 100 models for this to be a playable army. I do plan on playing this game. I've been playing more and more tabletop games of late, starting to get the desire to paint or to play. But when you've got 60 models painted already and you need about 100, I decided I'd finally start to do some customization. So just spent a little bit of time, and obviously this isn't finished, but just doing some repositioning of weapons and some weapon and arms swaps. So all these models, again, you won't notice dramatically once they're painted, but they will be variants of models that are already in the army. I think that's a reasonable way to tackle this. It at least makes me feel like I'm getting something done on the army, while I can't bear the thought of painting more of them. And while I was doing some converting, I found some spare parts which came with the upgrade sprue, which came with the magazine, the Agostini, I think is what it's called, magazine back in the day, battle games in Middle-earth. It's a bit of a rough job, or it looks like it, but basically I took a spare Lurtz model and did a head swap, did an arm swap, so it's now a captain with crossbow, or just a crossbow. It's a bit higgledy-piggledy, but once it's painted up, you won't be able to tell. So that's just another little bit of customization I did. This actually led into what you'll see next month, which was painting a couple of Uruk-hai models and seeing if that is something I want to pursue. I tend to lean towards painting evil models, and I can tell you, I'm thoroughly enjoying what I've done so far in May, but you'll have to wait to see that. And speaking of evil models, to go into my Moria sort of monster list, which, I probably won't ever play, and it's probably not viable, but I had a crack. I did this on the first day of the month, and this is a Dweller in the Dark. I believe they're a Dweller in the Dark. Could be Dweller in the Deep. No, it's Dweller in the Dark. And these are basically, for those who don't know, kind of mini Balrogs, although I've painted mine, and we'll go through the details, to be a bit more of a bat-like creature than a flame-like creature. But tried a few new techniques with this one. So started off basically stippling with multiple different colours of reds and reddy browns and mixes and low lights up to highlights. And then basically took a massively concentrated dark pigment wash and went over the whole thing and made it almost black, which is how we get into these deeper sort of crevices. And then where it dried too dark, I just went back in with some more stippling and dry brushing, and there was a lot of adding, taking away. And we end up with, and it looks, I don't know what it looks like on camera, it looks more red than brown in real life, but it's a reddy brown bat-like creature on a pretty standard, for me, base. Most of my Moria bases, and in fact I do a lot of Moria models, end up with this sort of similar base, but very happy with how he turned out, and so happy was I that I decided to paint a second one. So this is the second dweller in the dark that I own. This one, again, it looks more brown than red on camera, but it is certainly a darker tone than the other one. Had some issues with it. You can see it's very low to the ground when it stands. And that's because when I was trying to dry it, I melted the legs. So he's bending over, but I think it still works. Also had issues with, even though I undercoated them both at the exact same time and cleaned them both at the exact same time when I glued them together a couple of years ago, this guy just would not have paint stick to him. So I had to scrub him, reseal some gaps and stuff. But as far as beasts and sort of demon-y looking characters go, I think this is pretty good. There's some bright orange pinpoint highlights in the eyes that still give it a little bit of a Balroggy flair, but very much I've tried to make them look sinewy and fleshy and muscular. And again, matching sort of base covered up the skeleton in there, because it doesn't make sense that they would have the exact same base, but you put them together, you're going to sit them next to a Balrog and next to a bunch of goblins, and you got yourself a reasonable little start to an army there. Wow, I really... Are they the same legs? Did I really bend it that much? Ooh. Okay. Anyway, they're done, and I'm very happy with the results. All right, back after knocking the camera. The final project I did this month, which took a fair chunk of the month, was some Moria dwarves. Now, these are all second-hand models, and I wanted to try and get a bright blue sort of... The focus was the bright blue, but you might be able to see... does this camera not focus enough? But I've actually been able to paint the eyes, paint the skin highlights. I painted like I would paint any hero models. They're just limited detail. A lot of these had already been painted and were second-hand, so I was painting over the top. But I was really happy with the leather. I think the leather looks natural. It doesn't compete. It still looks like a blue themed army, despite very little blue actually being on the models. I think that's a strong theme. And I'll pull together some more examples. So we've got the leather models. We've got the steel armor models, which is this one, which again, I don't think that's too distracting. I think it's still very clearly a blue army. And then we have a bunch of others. We've got the archers, which this one, again, a lot of blue coming through. These face details are really kind of hard to pick out on these older models. On some of them anyway, because they're kind of... their faces kind of get mashed together in the production process. So you lose a lot of details and you got to kind of try to paint it in. So I might actually change the camera angle here and give you some more details. Well, this is a much better camera angle, and I'll pull in the rest of the plastic models, and there are a few sort of hero models I did, but this was done kind of on a whim. These models were given to me, or half of them were given to me by a friend. The other half were bought second-hand, sort of off eBay or Facebook or something. And basically, because I've painted so many Moria goblins, well, not so many, but I painted a lot of Moria goblins and monsters and whatnot that I thought, hey, I should probably bring in someone to fight them, and also a good army, which I don't paint much of. So that's the bulk of the force, and then we've got a few little special models. So the first ones are these models that I won on one of my mates' channels, Beard Clipper. So go and check out Beard Clipper. Andrew's a legend, and I think he's got a fair bit on these at the moment. So he's hobbying a bit less, but his videos are still just as good. But these are the Reaper miniatures. These are the female dwarves. And, well, I think I've done a pretty good job at, making their faces look relatively realistic. Decent contrast with the colours of their hair. And the blue theme carries through again. And I think, given they are slightly different in scale, when you chuck them amongst the other dwarves, you can't really tell. I mean, you can tell from the proportions, but just glancing at it, you can't see it very much. I have one Khazad Guard, which my friend kind of reposed when he was a kid, but I painted him up again. There's very little blue on this model, but I think it's a blue model or a blue-themed army. And I think, again, when you sit it in amongst the rest of the models, it just works. Also from my mate, Nathan, I was able to get these 3 metal, and as I said in the previous video, if you watched, I'm into my metal models at the moment, and was able to paint up these 3 metal dwarven rangers or dwarven archers. I'm not sure exactly what they are called, and he looks a little bit confused, but I'm really happy with the facial detail there, and the armor's solid, and I didn't spend heaps more time on the metal models than I did on the infantry models, but the details are a lot clearer, so you get a better result. You just do. So that's the final archer, and then the final model I painted was this old Barlin model, which I chopped off his axe, gave him a bit of a mace type staff thing. Again, I'm not amazingly impressed with the detail I got on him. I think he looks really good. I didn't want to spend heaps of time on him. But when you compare him to sort of this version I did when I was a kid, I mean, you can see, and I probably did this guy when I was 16 maybe. You can definitely see there's at least some upskilling. Not heaps of upskilling, but some upskilling. So side by side, they look pretty good. And then just for where the blue theme sort of came from, I believe in the Battle Games in Middle-earth magazine, they sort of encouraged you to try a blue paint job on this captain model. And, I mean, other than the dust on him, you could feasibly think that he's part of the same army. Ignore the base, and I'm not sure if I'm going to repaint him or not. I've repainted most of my old models. I might keep these 2 separate. And there it is. The month of April is complete, and it has been recorded. I think it was 25 models for the month, which is half of my total for the year, which is really, really positive, in a good place. Having said that, we're now in the middle of May. I've painted a couple of really nice models, but I haven't painted the quantities required to keep up with the one in every 3 days. I'm sure we'll get there by the end of the year and it'll be fine, but cognizant that I will miss at least a month of hobby when I'm over in the UK purchasing more models. And spoiler to my lovely partner, if you're watching, that will be happening. But let me know below how you think the models turned out, how you think those dwellers in the dark look. Particularly, I'm hoping they come across all right on camera, and sort of, I'm in no man's land with what I need to paint. I've got most of a Goblin Town army. I've got most of a Moria army. But I just don't have any desire to finish the project. So what should I paint next? Go and watch my backlog video where I go through every model I have in my backlog. Watch, tell me, let me know what you think I should paint.